Hey guys, welcome back to Gatsu Gaming. Today we are talking about Windwalker Monk. I've actually played a ton of Windwalker Monk here on beta in the past couple of days, and I'm really enjoying it. Windwalker retains pretty much everything that it had in Legion, minus, of course, Strike of the Windlord, but we have a fairly suitable replacement for it that actually gives us more chi. There are some minor changes to go over, so let's just hop right in. So here you'll notice our talent window here, you will see PvP talents. I was actually in war mode for a while. It was really fun. Windwalker's still good in PvP, even without the stun. So let's see here. So the top row here, this is the same across all the specs. We have Eye of the Tiger. Tiger Palm also applies Eye of the Tiger, dealing 500 nature damage to the enemy and 500 healing to the monk over 8 seconds. Basically, I've never really used Eye of the Tiger whenever I am running on a Windwalker Monk. Sans maybe a pure single target fight, but even then I've actually found Chi Wave to outperform that. Chi Wave, though, actually looks like it did take a little bit of a damage nerf. It could just be because of traits disappearing, but I'm not too sure. So Chi Wave, of course, is just a wave of Chi energy that bounces back and forth between you and your enemy, dealing 245 nature damage or 451 healing. It bounces up to 7 times to targets within 25 yards. This can go ahead and actually heal up a bunch of people in your group, give them a little extra healing whenever there's a lot of damage going out, as well as actually do quite a bit of AoE damage too. However, if you're looking for pure AoE damage, then Chi Burst is definitely what you're going to want. You essentially go ahead and make a Kamehameha wave style thing from Dragon Ball Z, a nice big Chi Blast goes right in front of you. It launches it up to 40 yards forward, dealing 650 nature damage to all enemies, and actually causes 1240 healing to the monk and all allies in its path. Now that 1240 healing may not seem like a whole bunch, but it's actually a very substantial amount in beta after the stat squish. So it's actually nothing to joke about. It's actually very, very strong. Chi Burst generates 1 Chi per enemy target damage up to a maximum of 2. So as long as you're going to hit 2 targets with it, it's probably very much worth doing. Even if it's 1, it could very well be worth doing if you need that extra healing. Level 30 row here, we have Celerity. Reduces the cooldown of roll by 5 seconds and increases the max number of charges. If you need an extra roll, this is definitely the way to go. Typically, I take Chi Torpedo, though, which just actually gives you a little bit longer distance than roll will, and increases your movement speed by 30% per 10 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. It does say maximum of 3 charges. Yeah, it's only because I had Celerity. So it is 2 charges, of course, baseline. Celerity makes it 3. And then lastly here, we have Tiger's Lust. This is our targeted... it's almost like a Hand of Freedom. In fact, actually, it basically is. 30-second cooldown. It increases the friendly target's movement speed by 70% for 6 seconds, and removes all snare and roots. Super useful, especially whenever you have any sort of, spider enemy or anything like that that will try to root you in place, and then some other mob in that trash pack will try to blow you up because you're rooted. Always fun, and definitely a great thing to have if you're not running with Paladin. Level 45 talents here, we have Ascension. This increases your max Chi by 1, your max energy by 20, and your energy regeneration by 10%. Now, initially, I was taking Ascension on beta here, but after, doing a little bit of research, I found out that Ascension is actually very underperforming right now compared to the other 2 talents, which isn't too surprising whenever you look at what the new other talents do here. So we have this new talent, Fist of the White Tiger. It is 40 energy, 30-second cooldown. You strike with the technique of the White Tiger, dealing actually fairly substantial amount of physical damage and generating 3 Chi. Now, this here is actually better than quite a few of other options in general for you to hit to make sure you don't mess up your mastery, which, of course, depends entirely on making sure you don't repeat the same move twice. That extra Chi is great, and overall, this actually gives you, I believe, the most Chi per minute as well. And then you have Energizing Elixir. Chug an Energizing Elixir, refilling all your energy and instantly generating 2 Chi. Energizing Elixir is typically the go-to for most players that are experienced with it, although I believe they are going to very quickly shift over to Fist of the White Tiger, as long as energy generation is not an issue. Energizing Elixir is great, especially whenever you know you're going to need, you know, say an extra little bit of burst during a burst window, like on Kingarath in, my goodness, over in Antorus, where you'll have those ads that will be an absolute pain in the butt. So our level 60 row here, we have Tiger Tail Sweep, increases the range of leg sweep by 2 yards and reduces its cooldown by 10 seconds. This, of course, is super useful whenever you do need that extra, you know, stun, potentially. And in general, it's just a very useful talent. We have Good Karma. This is actually a new passive here. 40-yard range, passive. Touch of Karma can now redirect an additional 50% of your maximum health. This is very similar to the legendary Cloak from Legion, and I'm glad to see that it's here for those of us that want to use it. And of course we have Ring of Peace. This is the absolute only thing that you can ever take during Sanguine Week. Form a Ring of Peace at the target location for 5 seconds. Enemies that enter it will be ejected from the ring. Ring of Peace was extremely underutilized early on in Legion by quite a few people because they didn't realize just how strong this was. You can use this to make sure things with Necrotic never touch you. You can block a hallway with it and keep everything far away while your ranged DPS blow it up. Ring of Peace is super powerful, and there's a lot of places you can use it right now. So definitely experiment with Ring of Peace whenever you get the chance. 75 row, this is our defensive row. We have Inner Strength. Each chi you spend will reduce the damage you take by 2% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. Now these stacks, whenever you get them, each individual stack will expire on its own. So you will not constantly have 10% reduced damage taken. That's not how it works. It is, however, very, very good, especially during your burst windows, so you can take just a little bit of extra damage if you get clipped by something while you're trying to eke out those extra numbers. We still have Diffuse Magic here, reduces magic damage you take by 60% for 6 seconds, and transfers all currently active harmful magical effects on you back to their original caster if possible. Then we have Dampen Harm, reduces all damage you take by 20% to 50% for 10 seconds, with larger attacks being reduced more. Definitely useful. There's going to be a very large effect, like at the end of Darkheart Thicket, where you have Xavius do that sort of like Apocalypse type ability. This will definitely keep you alive. Of course, in that case, Diffuse Magic's actually stronger, but Dampen Harm is a good general all-around choice. Level 90 here, we have Hit Combo. Each successive attack that triggers combo strikes in a row grants 1% increased damage, stacking up to 6 times. This is pretty nerfed from where it is on live. However, this is still a 6% damage increase that you should have up, you know, basically, you know, almost 100% of the time. After your first 6 attacks, of course, you should have it up for the remainder of the fight. You know, unless, of course, something happens and you have to stay out of range for far too long. Rushing Jade Wind is 3 energy plus 3 per second. It summons a whirling tornado around you, causing damage every 0.6 seconds to all enemies within 8 yards. Has a 5.1 second cooldown. This is essentially a toggle. It's very similar to Fury of Air for Enhancement Shaman. However, I'm not a huge fan of this, as draining my energy is not something I can do too often. However, if you're going to be stuck in a fight where there is very, very heavy AoE damage, it may be an option for you. And lastly here we have Invoke Zwen, the White Tiger. This is actually down from a 3-minute cooldown to a 2-minute cooldown. You'll summon your Zuen out in the world there for 20 seconds. He will attack your primary target, and he'll strike 3 enemies within 10 yards every 1 second with White Tiger Lightning for 422 nature damage. Now, with his reduced cooldown, he's actually a very, very powerful DPS CD. He is one of those things that you will definitely want to check out and test, as he may be a very, very big DPS increase depending on how much you're actually getting out of your standard abilities through hit combo. So I think that mostly you're going to be seeing people playing Zuen and hit combo. Level 100 row, we have Spiritual Focus. Every 2 chi you spend reduces the cooldown of Storm, Earth, and Fire by 1 second. This is essentially, I won't say it's Convergence of Fate, because Convergence of Fate was an attack chance, but this is a very reliable way to make sure you have up your AoE, and it's very welcome. It's actually very strong for single target as well. Whirling Dragon Punch. If you enjoyed the Whirling Dragon Punch playstyle in Legion, it is still here for you to use. 20-second cooldown, performs Devastating Whirlwind Upward Strike, dealing 3,500 damage to all nearby enemies, only usable while both Fists of Fury and Rising Sun Kick are on cooldown. Super powerful ability. I see a lot of monks using it, especially because of how much damage it'll do on trash. It's an absolute monster of an ability. And then we have Serenity. This will replace your Storm, Earth, and Fire with a 1.5 minute cooldown. Essentially massive single target DPS cooldown. It enters an elevated state where your mental and physical serenity, you achieve mental and physical serenity for 12 seconds. While in that state, you deal 20% increased damage and healing, and all your chi consumers are free and cooldown 100% more quickly. Serenity is absurdly powerful in a pure single target fight. And this will probably be the only talent you can take on those fights for sure. It is absolutely hysterical with heroism. So, if you get the chance to try this on PTR while we're super powerful, I highly recommend it. Taking a quick peek here at our spellbook, not much has changed. We still have Blackout Kick, which is our standard 1 chi spender. It deals a moderate amount of physical damage and reduces the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick and Fists of Fury by 1 second when used. Crackling Jade Lightning is just a ranged pull thing if we need it, or we'll knock back something if it's chasing you. Detox is your poison and disease cleanse. You need to keep this on a very comfortable keybind. You will use it a ton. Fuse Magic is a talent. We can skip it. Then we have Disable. 15 energy. Reduces the target's movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. Duration is refreshed by your melee attacks. Targets already snared will be rooted for 8 seconds instead. Disable is super powerful if you need to get a mob away from your tank. Especially if they're kiting. There's certain mobs that will do either like a frontal cleave that just hits really hard, or there's some very annoying mobs you can run into, and Disable is invaluable for fixing that situation for you and your tank. Fists of Fury, this is our main DPS chi spender here. This is our big ability. Pummels all targets in front of you, dealing 8645 damage over 3.4 seconds to your primary target, and 4322 damage over 3.4 seconds to other targets, and it can be channeled while moving. There's a lot of people that think Fists of Fury actually cannot be used while you're moving. That has not been a thing since, I believe, whenever we had to use a glyph for it back in, I think it was actually MoP we had a glyph for that. It removed the stun, but let us move while it's being channeled. They have just now made that baseline. Fists of Fury does an absurd amount of damage right now. Flying Serpent Kick. This is our, very big gap closer. We can get Monk is the most mobile DPS in the game, period. And Flying Serpent Kick will get you an incredibly far distance, and actually does a teeny little bit of damage and actually snares everything that you hit for a few seconds as well. Super useful whenever your tank engages something and you just need to slow it quickly and get into place at the same time. Leg Sweep is our stun. It is a 1 minute cooldown baseline, knocks down all enemies within 5 yards, stunning them for 3 seconds, down from 5 on live. Paralysis can be used as an interrupt as well, but it incapacitates the target for 1 minute. Damage will cancel this effect. The issue with Paralysis is that if you use it with an Affliction Warlock in your group, that Affliction Warlock that just dotted up the mob you just paralyzed as an interrupt is going to look at you and just go, dude, come on, why? Because you will pull off any dots when you use it. So be very careful with Paralysis if you're going to use it like that in a dungeon. Provoke, we still have our Taunt. Just taunts the target and causes them to move toward you at 50% increased speed. Shouldn't have too many times where we need to provoke anything as a monk DPS, but if we do, we have the option. Resuscitate is just a standard res. Rising Sun Kick, this is our secondary chi spender here. You kick upwards, dealing 3448 physical damage and reducing the effectiveness of healing on the target for 10 seconds. It should be noted that Rising Sun Kick was previously the absolute most important thing you could ever spend chi on. While it is still an incredibly powerful ability, Fists of Fury just does way more damage, of course, because it should. But Rising Sun Kick is super powerful and very impactful as well. So then we have Roll, of course, just roll a short distance. Spearhand Strike is our interrupt. It will interrupt any spell casting and prevent any spell that School of Magic from being cast for 4 seconds. Spinning Crane Kick is 2 chi instead of 3. You spin while kicking in the air, dealing a moderate amount of physical damage over 1.3 seconds to enemies within 8 yards. Spinning Crane Kick's damage is increased by 10% for each unique target you've struck in the last 15 seconds with Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick. This is hilarious to see the kind of damage you can do with spinning crane kicks sometimes. If there's a bunch of ads and you have Storm, Earth, and Fire up, they'll all pick a different target, and then you can Tiger Palm, then you can tab, pick a different target, and just keep going, and eventually you'll hit all the targets, and you can do a massive spinning crane kick that just annihilates everything. If you're very good at stacking up those spinning crane kick stacks, you can be an absolute monster. Storm, Earth, and Fire is our primary DPS cooldown. Split into 3 elemental spirits for 15 seconds, each spirit dealing 45% of normal damage and healing. You directly control the Storm Spirit while the Earth and Fire spirits mimic your attacks on nearby enemies. While active, casting Storm, Earth, and Fire again will cause the spirits to fixate on your target. It's very nice to have the ability to ignore those ads and just stay on one specific target if you need to, as it is a single target DPS increase to have them all on the same thing. Tiger Palm, this is our main energy dump. It is very, very heavy-handed. Attack with the palm of your hand, dealing a very small amount of physical damage. Tiger Palm has an 8% chance to make your next blackout kick cost no chi. This also generates 2 chi. Touch of Death, this is the biggest hit we have when played correctly. You inflict mortal damage on an enemy, causing the target to take damage equal to 50% of your maximum health after 8 seconds, reduced against players. During that 8-second duration, 10% of all other damage you deal to the target will be added to the final damage dealt. Depending on what you have, if you have some kind of big trinket that does a ton of damage, like say Kill Jaden's Burning Wish, and you hit it on AoE, you can do a far larger amount of damage than you're supposed to do with Touch of Death. There's actually a glitch at one point where Golgoneth's Vitality, the melee DPS trinket from Argus, it was doing just crazy numbers, like hundreds of thousands of DPS when we're typically doing like 4 to 5k. So there were people that were going and pulling raid bosses with it, and then they'd drop Golgoneth's, they'd go to Golgoneth's would proc, Touch of Death would be active, and then the boss would just fall over dead, because it would scale up and it'd be just nutty. Thankfully that's been fixed, and Touch of Death still hits like a truck, but it's not completely broken anymore. Touch of Karma is our main DPS, well not DPS, it's our main defensive cooldown as a Windwalker, which seems pretty weak when you, at first glance, but it's actually incredibly powerful. This is a 1.5 minute cooldown. All damage you take is redirected to the enemy target as nature damage over 6 seconds. Damage cannot exceed 50% of your max health, lasts for 10 seconds. This will save your life more often than you might think. You can sometimes soak some ground effects with it if you need to. You can also potentially stand in fire with this on, and then as soon as it, would fall off, get the hell out of the fire, and your healer will thank you for moving. Transcendence, just a quick little like Warlock circle type thing for a monk. Super useful if you know specifically where some things are going to happen, or if you have to get out of range of a boss constantly, like on Garathi Worldbreaker in Antorus. You set your spirit back behind you, back there with the range group, and then you can kind of dip out at the last second because you can teleport right away. Vivify is the heal we get instead of Effuse. Still works just the same for us, just a decent heal. Then we have Zen Flight, which is, I believe, a glyph. Just makes you look really cool. You sort of like float on a cloud. Zen Pilgrimage will bring you actually back here to the temple, which is the monk class hall at this point. Otherwise, it would take you to the Peak of Serenity, if you had not done the Legion content where it changes this spell. Afterlife, when you kill an enemy, you summon a healing sphere, healing you for about 3,500 when you walk through it. When you kill an enemy with Blackout Kick, you have a 50% chance to summon a Chi Sphere, which generates a Chi, 1 Chi, when you walk through it. It's just really nice to see those orbs around when you're soloing things. Afterlife will keep you alive, and sometimes you can actually end up with a bunch of extra Chi Spheres, so you can go from one ability to the next and not have to use your Tiger Palm to generate some more Chi. So the mastery here is Combo Strikes. Your abilities deal 32% more damage when they are not a repeat of the previous ability. Now that 32% of course is my mastery percentage, so that changes based on what you have for mastery. This is a very fun way to play the game. Trying not to repeat anything is pretty easy, and it's basically just a passive damage increase. Mystic Touch just makes any damage you do causes the target to take 5% more physical damage, which, surprisingly enough, is most of the damage that you do. Definitely a very good addition to any group, as well as Windwalking, which you and your allies within 10 yards have 10% increased movement speed, which is pretty great when you're trying to get through things as quickly as possible. So where do I see Windwalker Monk in Mythic Plus? Well, pretty much where it has been. It's going to stay up there near the top of the most desired melee DPS. It has a ton of utility, its burst damage is crazy, its sustained is good. I'm not going to say its sustained is crazy because it's not. It's just, at this point, you know, pretty much par for the course. For those of you that are experienced with Windwalker, I think you're going to really continue to enjoy Windwalker if you already do. So hopefully you guys will continue to enjoy Windwalker and they don't make any, you know, super major changes. I don't see that happening, though. I think they like the way Windwalker feels, and I definitely enjoy the way it feels right now, too. So I want to thank you guys for stopping in today to check out Windwalker Monk with me. If you liked the video, be sure you leave it a like. Dislike it if you didn't like it. Toss me a sub when you get the chance. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.